And I know it's hard for all of you to speak up against Donald Trump, and that's why we're here at this hearing talking all about Joe Biden. Talking all about Joe Biden's policy this, Joe Biden's policy that, all these people who committed crimes under Joe Biden. Is it just because you're consistently trying to ignore the fact that Joe Biden is not president?
One more criminal is still out there at large.
Well, it's
Why
funny
don't you
say
focus
that. I'm
on
sorry,
them?
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's a disgrace. You said you were going to go after the worst of the worst. You were going to go after convicted criminals. You're here questioning about all these criminals, going after moms, dads, separating parents from children. You have a voice, Republicans. Speak up.
Hey folks, welcome back to the channel, Freedom Forge, where we stand up for American values, for law and order, and for the truth. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. We're not afraid to say what the mainstream media won't. So, today we're reacting to a clip that's been making the rounds online. A Democratic congressman absolutely losing it at a House hearing, going off on a rant about President Trump, about immigration, and about so-called authoritarian lawless behavior. And then we've got New York Governor Kathy Hochul defending her state's so-called cooperation with ICE. Let's break it down point by point, because there's a lot of spin and a lot of misinformation here that needs to be called out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would urge you to reserve comment on what happened to Mr. Padilla until you get full information. In fact, I would urge all of my Republican colleagues to take a breath before you once again desperately run to bend the knee to Donald Trump and to Kristi Noem, because anyone with two eyes that can see that that was authoritarian, lawless behavior that no person in America, much less a senator conducting constitutional oversight, should have received. And I know it's hard for all of you to speak up against Donald Trump, and that's why we're here at this hearing talking all about Joe Biden. Talking all about Joe Biden's policy this, Joe Biden's policy that, all these people who committed crimes under Joe Biden. Is it just because you're consistently trying to ignore the fact that Joe Biden is not president? Donald Trump is president. And what he's doing right now, which you all know, is he is going after people who are lawfully present. Now, I appreciate the governor's being here. I'm sorry you have to deal with this crap. Governor Hochul, especially, I want you to know, as a proud member of the delegation of your state, I am not going to use my 5 minutes to mount a campaign for governor against you, as my colleague from the North Country chose to do. I will give you the opportunity to actually answer some questions, unlike she did. And I will allow you to explain exactly what the policies in New York are as it relates to cooperation between the state and federal agents.
First of all, glad you're not running against me. Thank you. Secondly, I appreciate the opportunity to break through all the noise here today and to stop the talking points that keep mischaracterizing our policies in the great state of New York. New York is not a sanctuary or a haven for criminals. We devote an enormous amount of our energy working to keep New Yorkers safe. $2.5 billion I've allocated just in the last few years. We do cooperate with ICE when it comes to investigating or building a case against criminals. We do this all the time. And when someone goes through the criminal justice system in the state of New York, they do their time in prison. We alert ICE as to when, 30 days in advance of when they're to be removed, and we send them away. That's how it's supposed to work. But what we do not do under our laws is divert our essential resources to protect everyday New Yorkers from crimes themselves and have that help ICE with civil immigration enforcement. That is their job. That is the federal government's job. And we cannot be told to enforce federal laws. It's not constitutional.
Or to use all your limited resources to spend all that time doing their job.
My concern is that every minute that ICE officers are going after moms and dads and kids and separating families, perhaps one more criminal is still out there at large.
Well, it's
Why
funny
don't you
say that.
focus
I'm
on
sorry,
them?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, because I actually, in my district office down in Lower Manhattan, witnessed ICE officers waiting for immigrants to come out of a courtroom. These are immigrants who have asylum applications. And I'm sure you agree with me that asylum is a lawful pathway to immigrate to this country. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
So in order to make these immigrants here unlawfully, the DHS is now dismissing their cases, their own removal proceedings against them, to void out the asylum process, the asylum claim. That way, when they go downstairs in the elevator, there are ICE agents that can be there and to arrest them and put them in expedited removal. And they don't have an asylum claim that is live anymore because they've just voided it out. These are non-criminal, these are non-violent immigrants who are here going through lawful process. And this is who the Trump administration is going after every single day. It's a disgrace. You said you were going to go after the worst of the worst. You were going to go after convicted criminals. You're here questioning about all these criminals. You're going after people who actually are going through the lawful process you say they should. But just because Donald Trump and Stephen Miller need to bump up their numbers because they can't do a good enough job in actually finding convicted criminals, you're going after moms, dads, separating parents from children. You have a voice, Republicans. Speak up. I yield back.
First, let's talk about the opening tirade. We've got this Democrat accusing Republicans of bending the knee to Donald Trump and calling law enforcement authoritarian and lawless. Folks, let's be clear. Enforcing the law is not authoritarian. What's actually lawless is having millions of people cross our border illegally, overwhelming our communities, and then expecting law enforcement to just stand down and do nothing. This representative says we should wait for all the facts. Sure, but then immediately jumps to conclusions, calling Trump and Kristi Noem authoritarian and attacking Republicans for supporting law enforcement. It's the same old playbook. Demonize anyone who believes in strong borders and then deflect by pretending the real threat is our own government, not the criminals crossing the border. And then, of course, they pivot to blaming Republicans for talking about Joe Biden. Folks, let's remember, when Biden was in office, we had record-breaking illegal crossings, sanctuary cities, and an administration that did everything it could to undermine ICE and Border Patrol. Now that Trump is back and restoring law and order, suddenly it's a crisis? Give me a break. Now, Governor Hochul wants us to believe New York is not a sanctuary or a haven for criminals. She brags about cooperating with ICE and spending $2.5 billion on public safety. But what does that money really go to? In reality, we know New York City has openly flouted federal law, passed sanctuary policies, and tied the hands of police and ICE every step of the way. She says New York alerts ICE 30 days in advance before releasing criminals. That sounds nice on paper, but let's not kid ourselves. How many times have we seen violent offenders released back onto our streets because ICE was actively blocked from picking them up? That's not cooperation. That's obstruction. And then Hochul says the state can't be told to enforce federal laws. Sorry, Governor, but immigration law is federal law. And when you refuse to cooperate with ICE on civil immigration enforcement, you're creating a magnet for illegal immigrants, including those with criminal backgrounds. That's not keeping New Yorkers safe. That's putting them at risk. Now, let's talk about the congressman's little anecdote, how he witnessed ICE officers waiting outside courtrooms for immigrants with pending asylum applications. He's outraged that ICE might arrest someone who's going through the lawful process. Here's the reality. The vast majority of these so-called asylum seekers are gaming the system. The left loves to blur the line between legal and illegal immigration. But the facts are plain. Most asylum claims are denied, and many people disappear into the shadows once they're released. ICE is doing its job by enforcing the law and making sure our system isn't abused. The congressman claims the Trump administration is voiding out asylum claims to arrest people. Well, if someone doesn't qualify for asylum, or if they're here illegally, ICE has every right to detain them. That's not authoritarian. That's literally what the law says. If you don't like the law, work to change it. Don't attack the men and women risking their lives to keep us safe. And of course, we get the emotional appeals separating parents from children, targeting non-criminal immigrants. Folks, nobody wants to see families separated, but whose fault is that? It's the parents who break the law and bring their kids across the border illegally. We have to enforce our border for the sake of national security, economic stability, and the rule of law. The Democrats want open borders, plain and simple. They want to flood this country with people who they think will vote for them, all while pretending to care about the children in lawful process. But ask yourself, if these policies are so compassionate, why are our cities in chaos? Why are our resources stretched thin? Why are American citizens suffering while illegal aliens get special treatment? So to my fellow patriots, don't be fooled by the spin. Supporting law enforcement is not authoritarian. It's common sense. Demanding that our leaders put American citizens first is not hateful. It's patriotic. We will not apologize for wanting secure borders, safe streets, and a government that upholds the Constitution. If you agree, like this video, share with your friends, and let's keep the pressure on our leaders to do what's right. Stand strong, stand proud, and always stand up for America. Thanks for watching, and God bless the USA.